Hi, it's Katya. And today I wanted to um, talk about something that we all go through um, at various points in life, which is big transformations and change points where our whole perspective, um, how we look at the world changes. And um, I think most of us, at least, or many of us, go through this at some point in our lives, if not at um, many different points in our lives, or at least several. And these changes can be smaller, they can be larger. There are different magnitudes of change. But I want to really address them because I see many folks going through big changes like this right now as part of what seems to be, a larger global shift. And so the thing about these changes is that we don't really have a cultural context for them in terms of, indigenous societies have had containers where such as rites of passage, right, or initiations, where when someone was going through such a transformation, it was acknowledged, it was mirrored back to them by the community, meaning that, they were assured that this was a normal part of life, and that even though they felt like it maybe a little bit, that they weren't going insane or losing their mind or going off the deep end. So that, I think, is hugely important because with with what's going on right now, many people find themselves without that cultural container and context, without someone to lead them through and say, hey, here's what it's like on the other side. Especially if you are in a community where you're going through a transformation in consciousness, where you're maybe there really aren't a lot of folks around you that have gone through that transformation themselves. And you're kind of, I don't want to say ahead, but, if you don't have someone that can guide you and reach out a hand and pull you to the other side, then you can feel it can feel very lonely. It can feel very alienating, and it can feel just so confusing and frightening as well. So what I, feel in my heart is that we really have to be there for each other in this way, and start a kind of model of leadership where we actually all lead each other, rather than, there being certain folks who are the coaches and the leaders, which I think that's fine. But really, at the end of the day, we're all leading each other, because everyone's a little bit ahead and everyone's a little bit behind somebody else, and everyone can reach back and help someone else, and everyone can reach forward and be helped. And I think that at the end of the day, this is really what we need to be doing and focusing on at this point. And the other thing that I wanted to say about this is that it can feel like a huge, like something is terribly wrong. Okay, so when we start to, I alluded to this earlier about that feeling of I might be going insane, but when we start to really kind of realize that the old thing we've been holding on to, the old way of looking at things, is just not working anymore, but we don't yet have ourselves firmly planted in the new thing, it can feel very groundless. And our internal state can mirror itself in our external circumstances. So, for instance, we might find that we're not able to fit into the work environment that that we have been in the past. I see this happening a lot to folks. That we just, it's like oil and water, this work environment where we used to fit in, we had our place, we found our place, and it worked, it was harmonious for a while, and it provided security. Now it's just not fitting in that same way, and there's a friction or a rub, or maybe it can even feel like there's just nothing to plug into for you in that environment. And that's, to me, from what I've seen, that can be a real sign that you're just ready to move on to the next thing, and that it's actually just your, life force, or whatever you want to call it, you know, kind of leading you on to the next iteration of who you're meant to be. So rather than becoming afraid and panicking that we won't have security, what we can do is realize that there's a need for grief. There's a need for grieving the old thing, because we can't really cleanly move into something new unless we acknowledge that part of us is sort of dying. Part of us is sloughing off. And the more conscious we can be about saying goodbye to that, honoring that yes, this was our experience, this is how we lived, what we lived as for a certain amount of time, and that we're actually no longer, we're growing into something else. We're growing beyond that phase. And so number one is, allowing that grief to happen, making space for it, making time for it, realizing that it's healthy, it's a healthy organic process. And then on the other hand is looking forward, making it a practice to, as soon as your mind kind of clicks into the fears or starts spiraling into, oh my God, what's going to happen, to actually start looking forward into the future. Because if you're going through that kind of transition, then I, am pretty much sure that you also have within you something, a kind of vision, even if it's very raw, that is propelling you forward. So whatever little pieces you have of that, whatever pieces you have of that vision, let it pull you, and actually look to that, trust it, as unfamiliar as it may seem, because it does come through. It does come through, and then you end up kind of being pulled up onto that next plateau, or that next, I think plateau is a good word. And the other thing that I wanted to say is that there's a real push and pull in that time, in that transition. Like, we can feel like, oh my God, here I am in this new way of seeing things, and it's so amazing, and I'm this new person. But then find ourselves being pulled back, and being pulled back becoming very painful. And one of the ways of looking at this so that it can make some sense to us is that there's, an instinct to protect homeostasis within us, both physically and, intellectually, emotionally, mentally, etc. So as soon as we begin to grow beyond where we have been, something, that instinct toward homeostasis pulls at us, because its job is to protect us. And just like our body temperature adjusts based on whatever's going on around us, or rather, we have an internal mechanism that brings us back to homeostasis. No matter what is going on around us, it tries its best, right? We shiver if it's cold, we sweat if it's hot, and that's a self-protective mechanism. So we'll have that same kind of thing happen when we are changing a lot and moving into our true selves, and we can really learn to dance with it. What sometimes happens is we might want or expect that change to just happen overnight and not be pulled back. This happens, I see this happening with addiction recovery as well, where folks, make some headway with moving away from a substance or a behavior, and then they get pulled back and they think, oh no, that means that all the days that I had that were, abstinent, or I was on the wagon, so to speak, are for not, but it really isn't the case. It's just that you're going through this push-pull, and yes, it is important to keep taking steps to move forward, but if we completely neglect or if we completely condemn that part of us that wants to pull us back into homeostasis, then we'll really create a war inside of ourselves, and you know, we'll kind of make the conflict more painful for ourselves. But what we can do is make our consciousness big enough, like make the way that we think of it and the way that we hold it in our heart, this whole experience, big enough to include this period of going back and forth. And we can also have faith that, that we are moving to the other side, that we're not going to be left, forever and ever behind in the old thing, because we have that drive inside of us. It's driving us from within. And there might be a period where we're just, kind of trying to move forward and being pulled back, and try, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And that there actually, it's healthy to have some room for that. And, as long as we're not kind of giving up, which, there's that life force inside of us, we can always tune into it, touch into it, connect into it. And feel how it really does want to evolve and change. So that's a little bit about that, that journey, that part of the journey. And, it's always great to get help. It's always great to reach out to folks that that can help you feel a little bit more, just a little bit more held in the whole process. If there's anyone that even intuitively, even if they're not a coach or a guide officially, I would really recommend reaching out to them, because most of us, do want to help others on the path, and we all need help as well. So I think that's all. And feel free to email me. My contact is on the website, katya@katya.coach. And I just am excited to see your transformation. Okay, bye.